good evening, and welcome to another edition of A Political Scope. I'm your host, Edward Lane, and I have with me in studio this evening the Honorable Minister within the Ministry of Finance, Bishop Juan Edgel. Minister, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Edward, and very good evening to all of our viewers.
Our discussions tonight will center on public procurement. We are, of course, in election season, and we've seen over the years some of the comments coming out of the opposition with regards to the public procurement systems in place, whether they are effective, and accusations in some cases against the government of favoring particular contractors. I want to start off first and foremost with the process itself. In a nutshell, what is public procurement like in Guyana's case?
Eddie and to our viewers, it would be quite instructive for me to begin by indicating that in the midst of all of the criticisms that exist, whether justifiable or unjustifiable, when it comes to public procurement in this part of the world, Guyana is a leading light, a champion, and a flag carrier where it comes to this particular subject. We're the only country in the Caribbean as of today's date that has enacted legislation in our National Assembly or our Parliament that speaks to the issue of public procurement. It's not just an administrative act. It's not just a set of rules that has been put together by government departments. But this is law. It is being legislated, enshrined in law, rules-based. And for that, every Guyanese should be extremely proud. Because when that piece of legislation was enacted, we need to remind ourselves it was under the PPPC, under the Jagdeo presidency, that we had a procurement act established and a National Procurement and Tender Administration Board that takes care of public procurement. In Guyana, public procurement is what it is, public, and I will emphasize public just now. It is open to all because there is legislation that indicates notice must be given to all. Just pick up your Sunday's papers and turn through it, you will see. The Regional Democratic Council Region Number 2 invites bidders to tender for the following jobs: a culvert, a bridge, repairs to a school, fixing of a sluice, drainage and irrigation works, cleaning of canals. Everything that needs to be done where the government's money, taxpayers' money, or investment money needs to be spent is advertised publicly, open, notice to all. So there is no backroom wheeling and dealing like what obtained under the PNC's administration in the past, where the permanent secretary or the head of an agency or somebody who's in the know could call a friend and says, come to my office, I have a job to give to you. So where we are at today in terms of public procurement, you don't show a party card, you don't indicate your political affiliation, you don't have to indicate who you're connected to. It's open and rules-based. Your bids are deposited in a sealed tender box. It is declared open at a specific time. And when it is open, it can be open in the presence of the media, representatives of all of the bidders, and any party who is interested. When these bids are open, the sums and specific information is to be announced publicly so all present can know exactly the contract sum that was being tendered or what is the bidding price, and to ensure that they're in compliance with all of the necessary specifications.
Like I indicated before you go on, Bishop, I indicated in my opening comments that this has been quite a hot topic, especially in the opposition quarters. And the upcoming elections, this can potentially be one of the key talking points. But for the information of our viewers, the residents here on the Escobar Coast, for them to have an understanding, why is it important for them to understand public procurement and their role, in a sense, in ensuring that this process is really public and open?
Because the intent of government at all times, every time there is a budget that is read, there are monies that are allocated for capital works, monies that are allocated for maintenance works, and purchases of goods and supplies. Significant sums. This legislation and the approach of government is to give comfort to all Guyanese that when your monies are being expended, everyone who's a contractor, a supplier, you have a fair chance. There is openness, there is access, equal access to all, and that when the jobs are offered, we are getting what is underscored over and over as it relates to good governance, value for money. So let me give an example to make it simple for our people to understand. Let's say we are procuring security services for all government buildings on the Essequibo Coast. We don't only advertise for firms that are resident in the Essequibo Coast. Security firms anywhere in the country can bid. There's what is called a standard bidding document. So everybody will have access to the same amount of information. They will be evaluated based upon the provision of the information to the questions and criteria that is set in an objective manner. And the person who appears to the evaluators to be able to provide the service, the cheapest, most reliable, and in keeping with all of the criteria that is set forth, would be awarded the job. It's not an engagement of the administration with an individual working out a deal. So we must debunk whether it's the supply of exercise books to the Ministry of Education, whether it's the providing supplies for the military, whether it's the procurement of vehicles to the police force, whether it is the procurement of drugs in the health sector, or whether it's the fixing of footpaths. Simple things that operate in the region, bridges, cleaning of the canals. The bidding document will tell you how many rods to be cleaned, and you will be able to bid at what price you can do a rod. You can be upset with the government if a competitor of yours says he's going to clean the drains, maintain it on a monthly basis at $90 a rod, and your bid price was $120. The important thing is that when we award that price at $90, the work must be done based on specification, because there's always a fear that somebody may come in cheaper but will not provide you with the quality of service that is required. And I think that is the basic concern that exists, because people sometimes say things like, the roads are not properly done, the drains are not properly cleaned, the supplies are not the standard that you're looking for. Well, every time there is a procurement that is being done, there is also identified an agency, a firm, a consultancy, or an engineer who is to supervise the delivery of that service or the supervision of those works.
Tell us a little, though, Minister, in terms of the process, the tender process, because the government, again, has been accused in the past and continues to be accused of, while it's called public procurement, there seem to be some concerns with the process or the tendering process from the time that the projects are advertised onto awarding of contracts. Just walk us through the process.
Okay. The job is advertised. prospective bidders need to buy the bid document, which is what is called the standard bid document, which would mean everybody's getting the same document stating what are the criteria. They have to answer specific questions. They have their checklists. You fill up that bidding document, and it must be deposited in the tender box before the time stipulated for the deadline. Let's say 9 a.m. on the 6th of February is the date for closing of tenders. At 9 a.m. or just after 9 a.m., the tender box is open, the amount of bids are counted, and it is made public to everybody. Once the bids are collected, it then goes to what is called an evaluation committee. The evaluation committee sits to examine the documents, to check to see that the information that is provided meets what is required. For example, they have to put a tick. Did the person submit their NIS compliance? Those things are compulsory. There are a lot of people who want jobs, but they don't want to be compliant. Did the person put in their GRA compliance? Tick. Did the person indicate their ability to finance this job by access to financing through a bank? Or did they get a letter from the bank indicating that they will have access to monies to be able to get the job done? Because a lot of people come and say they could get a job done, you award them the job, but they don't have the necessary cash flow. And then the job suffers significant delays. Then they check for arithmetical errors. They do the calculations to make sure that the figures are correct, the rates are correct, and the bottom figure that you would have given is correct, because what we would have had in times past is that a number of bidders would have put $19 million as their final price at the bottom, the sum total. But when the evaluators would have gone through, calculate the rate and check it is $21 million. So you have what is called the corrected sum. So the day of the opening, they come in the lowest. But when the evaluators did the actual calculation and the checks, they're no longer the lowest. They're now 21 million as against 19 million. Now, once that is done, the report goes to the tender board. And once the report goes to the tender board,
and all of that is done in the public.
All of that is done. It's no backroom dealing. That's why it's called public procurement. Once it goes to the tender board examines the report, what is called the evaluation report. Once the tender board agrees with the evaluation report based upon the law and what is required in the Procurement Act, the tender board then, if it's more than $15 million, sends it to Cabinet for Cabinet to offer its no objections. Again, I emphasize, it's no objections. Cabinet does not award contracts. Once Cabinet offers its no objections, a Cabinet decision is issued. A copy of that decision goes to the tender board. The tender board then writes the procuring entity, informing them that it is okay for them to go ahead and award the contract. The procuring entity now calls in the contractor, awards the contract, signs the contract, and the contract is to be executed, monitored, and implemented in keeping with the specifications as it relates to the bidding document.
What if Cabinet objects?
If Cabinet objects, Cabinet will state its objection. It goes back to the tender board. The tender board will then have to inform the procuring entity that there is an objection, and they will have to either, number one, retender, and that has happened before, or they will have to, let's say, for example, we don't agree with the evaluation report because something doesn't look right. Maybe, as well, they can have a re-evaluation, a new evaluation panel could be put into place to examine those documents. Let's say, for example, a contractor is disqualified. He is $8 million, just using a hypothetical figure. He's $8 million lower than all the other bidders for the procurement of a service. But he is considered ineligible or non-responsive because of some frivolity. Cabinet could say, hey, check and let's see if this is really So sometimes in the checking, the evaluators will discover that they have overlooked something. And then they will come back and say, look, we did overlook this. Of a fact, the person is responsive, because there are things that are fatal. There are things that are fatal. If you're not compliant, NIS, GRA, these things are fatal. You cannot be offering contracts to persons who have not submitted their NIS and GRA compliance. And this has happened over and over. So when a bid is open and you're not compliant, even though you're the lowest price, your bid can't be examined because you're not compliant. And I would be assured that all Guyanese, despite of their political persuasion, would agree with the process that if you want to be spending and earning taxpayers' money, at minimum, you must be an honorable person that meets your financial obligations for your employees and for yourself at both GRA and NIS.
But if you're saying that Cabinet's role is basically to examine, if Cabinet objects, it is because of very, very good reasons, and Cabinet's role is not to say, hey, this person or that person should get the contract, then why is the opposition so much strong on the view of wanting to remove that position from Cabinet? Could you?
We have always argued this case. If we are going to be accountable to the people of Guyana as their elected representatives, we must have a role. Because when something goes wrong, the opposition don't get the blame, it's the government that gets the blame. So we must be able to put every contract that is out there must be under the scrutiny of the Cabinet first to ensure that the public officials are sending to us something that can stand the scrutiny of it can stand the scrutiny of the Cabinet, the opposition, the Parliament, the people, to ensure that we have a proposal that is tight. And I must say, Eddie, the people that work in the system, whether the REOs, whether the permanent secretaries, whether the engineers, the experts, the people, the technical people who have been involved in evaluation, they have done a tremendous job. It's in very few instances, very, very few, in my experience, in the 3+ years that I've sat at Cabinet, on a very few instances, Cabinet would have offered, or Cabinet would have withheld its no objection, I should say. Very few instances. If we are concerned about specific things, we send it back for further checks.
Another issue that is likely to take center stage in the elections campaign with regards to public procurement is that of the allegations that you'd have heard over the years, and they continue to happen, where government is accused of handing out jobs to its friends, its buddies, its PVP supporters, and so forth. How do you respond to that, bearing in mind the explanation that you just gave?
It is not possible. It is not possible. It does not happen. It cannot happen. And no contractor, supplier, or individual in this country should be denied work because they are the supporter of a political party or they share a political opinion that is different to another. We must take politics out of procurement. What we have, let me give a straight case. A lot of noises were raised by the AFC in particular in this area of public procurement, and it had to do with the award of the contract for the specialty hospital. One of the bidders, Federal Lloyd's, is a client of Mr. Ramjatan, the leader of the AFC. They put in their bid, and I remember this case vividly because it took so much political overtones. They put in a bid with 2 prices. It's not allowed. Which is your price? They had a price, and then it says, if we get the job, you'll get a discount. It don't go like that in procurement, sir. You need to put your price. Which is the price? Every bidder is asked to state their bid price. Federal Lloyd put two prices, a high price and a discounted price. Which price should the evaluators evaluate against? Syringe's price was the lowest. They satisfied all of the criteria, and it was awarded to Syringe. The AFC and Mr. Ramjatan took the government to task for the award of that contract. What was Mr. Ramjatan really trumpeting? Was that his client, and if you have a client, the expectation is that he is paid for the services that he was carrying out. You cannot use your political office to be a lobbyist for a contractor for the destroying of a project of national importance. And the AFC must be judged. I'm just giving you one example. The AFC must be judged by the people of Guyana for that act. You are the lawyer for a company that lost a bid, and you're destroying an entire project and prospect of building a specialty hospital in Guyana because your client didn't get the job. No politician should be engaged in such a lobby. Now, at the regional level, there are monies that are allocated to regions. Let's say, for example, in the Essequibo Coast, Region 2, there are monies that are allocated to do specific things in various programs, whether it's the education program, the health program, the agriculture program, or general administration. The REO, as you would see in the newspapers, advertises sometimes full-page ads, sometimes half-page ads, indicating that these jobs are to be done. So everybody in Essequibo, as well as everybody in Guyana, knows that these jobs are to be done. And they actually put next to the job the engineer's estimate. So there's an $8 million proposed extension to be done at a nursery school. There's a $6 million bridge to be built here. There's a $4.5 million footpath. There's 300 meters of road estimated at $2.9 million to be done. So the contractor knows the size of the job, the location of the job, and he could now go and inspect, and he could start preparing his bids and put it in. When those bids are in, companies, individuals, the evaluators are evaluating what is in front of them. And then a recommendation for an award is made. At what stage should politics play a role? And this is where we have to be very careful. Because if you go through the checklist, you will discover that a number of contractors have political opinions and have taken public political positions that are anti-government. But they are still engaged in work. And that is not something that I'm guessing. It is something that I know. People will say things like, for example, the government, in giving their own supporters work, PPP supporters could accuse us of that, but they're giving a man who's an opposition man work. And then you have the opposition who's also saying, we ain't getting work, they're only giving their supporters work. When you are considered neither fish nor fowl, it's a good thing.
But coming back to the issue of, you raised the issue of the specialty hospital, and you spoke of the issue with Federal Lloyd putting two prices, Surrender winning the contract. But the opposition has taken the government again to task too, when the government was forced to take some actions against Surrender.
Well, because we put people's interests first. And when the government discovered that a fraudulent document was submitted to it in the process of the executing of the contract, the government took steps. And it is now public knowledge, and the government must be commended, and the people of Guyana will be able to see the strength of character of the administrators in the government. Number one, we terminated the contract. Number two, we took Syringa to court. Number three, we now have a high court judgment against Syringa awarding the government significant sums. That is action to ensure that the public purse is preserved. And with all of the accusations that have been made, we have shown over and over we have the will, the political will, and the political wherewithal to administer this country in such a way that the public purse is protected and that we take the decisive and necessary actions to ensure we get value for money. Now, there are contractors out there every day who are being penalized by this government, people who do shoddy work. And this has been an issue over and over. The work is not properly done. Now, in every contract document, when a contract is signed, there is what is called a retention clause. If the contract is a 20 million, a significant sum, maybe 5%, depending on the work, 10%, is retained by the procuring entity for a particular period. Because if anything goes wrong, there must be money to fix it. For example, you hire a carpenter to change your roof, 45 zinc sheets on your nice little house. And 1 week after, rain is coming in. But it's a new roof you've just fixed. What do? You send for the carpenter. It could have simply meant that he did not nail the zinc down properly, or he did not use the right kind of nails, and he ought to fix it. But in the small man's case, the carpenter might want to say, you got to pay me because this is another job. In the government's case, it is not so, sir. You can't get all of your money until a particular period would have passed so that we could ensure that everything is well. You're engaged to do plumbing at a school, and the pipes are loose 6 weeks after. There is money in the retention to do the remedial work. When you don't perform and you don't deliver on time, there are penalties by way of liquidated damages. The contractor is penalized every day. They have to pay liquidated damages at a calculation at a particular percentage as stipulated in the contract.
I want to take you back again to the issue of bidding and having completed the process. Let's say a contractor is not satisfied with the fact that he wasn't awarded the contract. What is the process of recourse?
Every day, somebody is going to win and somebody is going to lose. But if a contractor, having lost a bid, feels that something has gone wrong, and we have had that. Let's say, for example, a contractor, in his list of equipment that he provided, sworn affidavit that he's in possession of these equipment. I have so much ransom, I have so many trucks, I have so many excavators to get this job done. And he is deemed non-responsive because the evaluators say, you didn't provide all the equipment that was required. He could make an appeal. There is what is called a bid protest committee. But even before you get to the bid protest committee, he can write to the procuring entity and ask for a review, like would have been done over and over and over. And it is during that review, if something would have gone wrong, it can be corrected, and the evaluation report reflecting that correction. If having gone to the procuring entity for a review, he's still not satisfied, he could approach the tender board with a protest. He's now protesting. They're about to award this contract to Mr. X, and I'm protesting that he was not the lowest responsive bidder, that I was. These are my reasons. I'm asking that it be examined. The tender board would then put in place, in keeping with the law, a 3-person bid protest committee. One of those persons will be named by the Attorney General, which more than likely will be somebody who is versed in law to make sure that the law was properly followed. One will be named by the Minister of Finance as a person to be representing contractors in a particular field. Let's say it's a job of a security contract. You'll have to have somebody who is au fait with that kind of work to be able to review. If it has to do with the building of roads, it could be somebody who is an engineer or somebody from a consulting firm. These persons more than likely have to be paid for the services of doing that review. And then the tender board names the other person. There's a stipulated time within the law of which this review must be complete. I think it's no longer than 21 days. I think it's no longer than 21 days. Don't hold me to that, but it's not beyond 3 weeks. It could be, I think, 17 days or something like that. A report has to be given, and while the bid protest committee is conducting its work, the procuring entity cannot cannot go ahead with the contract. It's almost like if they are injuncted. You cannot proceed. Everything is on pause until the outcome of the bid protest. So even if a procuring entity goes ahead and says, I'm giving the job to Mr. X, and Mr. B feels aggrieved, he could protest. And once he has protested, Mr. A is now on hold. The award of that job is on hold, but it can't be on hold forever because you can't hold up government's work. The tender board has to put in place a bid protest committee that examines the thing and within a stipulated time gives a report. It's either taken away from A and given to B, or the committee affirms that A is eligible because of the circumstances, and the matter closes.
Minister, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. Of course, I'm going to give you some time for some closing remarks with regards to the issue of public procurement and the public perception that is being created with regards to how this process is really executed.
Well, I would want to say to the Guyanese people, this subject has seen so much of politics involved in it that it has become almost a daily talk. But what we have is a rules-based system. And in the exercise or in the operationalizing of a rules-based system, what is important is process. Because if you follow the process, we all must be willing to live with the outcome, which is what is called the product. To all the contractors, bidders, and suppliers, as a government, we've been working with them and we've been working with you to make you more responsive. We have had procurement symposia to educate, to bring greater clarity and understanding to prospective bidders so that in the filling up of their forms and the placing of their tenders, they can be more informed of how to present a responsive bid. And I'm happy when you see 16 or 17 firms or contractors bidding for the same job. It tells you that people have confidence in the system. And every week, the tender box at the various entities are filled. And the fact that people are engaging, it is a clear case that the rhetoric that exists out there in the opposition camp, using this as a political talking point, is not gaining traction because the small man, small companies, small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, everybody's having an equal opportunity at getting a chance of engaging and benefiting as a result of public procurement.
Honourable Minister, again, I want to thank you very much. Of course, was joined in the studio this evening by the Honourable Bishop Juan Edgel, Minister within the Ministry of Finance, and our discussions were centered on public procurement. I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening, and have a good rest of the evening.